Okay, everyone. Hopefully, everyone can hear me fine. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you back to another in the series of lessons from China, talking about the transformation of marketing and PR. My name is Michael Diamond, and I'm the academic director of the Integrated and Marketing Communications Department. Various programs we offer, graduate programs in marketing and PR, and certificate programs at the School of Professional Studies here at NYU. Within its division of programs in business. And as always, I'm also delighted to welcome and be joined by our co-hosts, Paul Lin and Bryce Whitwam, both faculty members teaching with us this year in our campus in Shanghai. So welcome them both. But it is, of course, a special privilege to invite our speaker, William Bao Bean, to join us today. William is the general partner at SOSV, which is an accelerator VC with currently $700 million or so under management. And he's the managing director of Chinaaccelerator, which is the global internet accelerator within SOSV. And reportedly the very first accelerator to launch in Asia. Managing director also of MOX, which I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about, which is a mobile-only accelerator, and you can see William proudly sporting the mobile-only T-shirt, which we'll all have to get copies of soon. We'll be running around New York City in those, William. That looks nice. And that's an accelerator which itself has 160 million smartphone users on its platform. So, I think Bryce and Paul will fill in some details, but, to us at NYU, nothing could be more urgent and important, especially now, given, some very challenging and difficult relationships and issues around our Asian students, our Asian population in America. And I want to be on record and be very clear. We stand strongly in support of all of our students and our colleagues and neighbors and friends here in the US, in supporting them through these difficult times. But the conversation would be important at any time. Mark Pritchard, among others, the CMO of or Chief Brand Officer of P&G, has pointed to China as the place to look. There was a famous Economist article not too many months ago that said we should be spending some more time drawing lessons from China. And I think in the spirit of, our community, which is very focused on, learning more and building these transformative learning experiences steeped in the real world, it's absolutely imperative we too, as marketers and PR practitioners, think about what's going on in China, seek to learn, to understand, and figure out the implications. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to my colleagues. I think, Bryce, you're kicking off, and you got any other quick intros you want to make, and then we'll let William present. William has a presentation. We'll probably run about 30 to 40 minutes. If you have questions, please pop them in the Q&A down the bottom. For those of you probably more than familiar with Zoomland now, there's a little Q&A box should be at the bottom of your screen. And those questions will be curated by the team, and we'll get to those probably towards the end of William's presentation. And if there are any technical issues, then you could put something in the chat, and my colleagues, Julie or Bonnie, will be able to attend to those. So, all right, without further ado.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Welcome everyone in Shanghai and in Asia. Good morning to the people in New York and the East Coast, and then good afternoon to some people in Europe that are calling in. This is our fourth installment of Transforming Marketing and PR and Lessons Learned from China, all right? There's a lot, China's in the news, there's a lot going on from a political standpoint, but what we want to do with this series and with this program was really bridge the gap from a business perspective. Right there, as Michael alluded to, there's a lot in terms of innovation. There's a lot in turn, you're hearing a lot about WeChat, you're hearing about all these platforms, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, all of these different platforms. And what we want to do was, really less about, showcasing, but really about what can we learn? What can we take? What nuggets of information can we take that's happening in this environment? And as Michael Diamond said, as Mark Pritchard has said, China is sort of the future around business, right? And he works for an FMCG, consumer packaged good perspective. So really, again, this fourth installment, last week we had Bess Lee talk about Chinese innovation. Today, what we want to do was bring William in. William is someone that I've worked with very, very closely over the last 5 years. I'm part of the sort of mentor advisory program within the incubator that he has set up here in Shanghai, and then also in Taipei, which is MOX, which is what he'll get into. And it's gotten to a point now where a lot of the advising that I'm doing, some of them are China-based, but a lot of them are actually external to China, external to Shanghai, Southeast Asia, a lot of Americans and Westerners who have a great idea and want to scale quickly. And they're coming here to China rather than going to Silicon Valley, or rather going to Silicon Alley in New York, right? So today is really about getting some insights, and William is by far one of the biggest deal makers Shanghai has seen and Asia has seen. So on that note, I just want to introduce William, and I'll pass it over to you to sort of take the show and tell us about what's happening here and how the rest of the world can learn.
William, you need to come off mute, and then we'll probably be able to see your, and we see your slides fine, but just need to come off mute. Thanks.
No, thanks. Really appreciate the opportunity, Paul, Bryce, and definitely from everyone in the NYU family. I really appreciate the opportunity to share. So again, my name is William Bao Bean, general partner at SOSV. If you're familiar with venture capital, we're quite different than other VCs in that we are global, one fund, but global. And I'm just going to go really quickly through an intro and then talk a little bit sort of in terms of micro terms on what's going on in China, especially around marketing. We are global. We're a US-based fund. I'm actually from New Jersey, and our headquarters is in New Jersey, but we have offices all around the world. We're unique in venture capital in that we invest in multiple sectors in one fund. So I run cross-border internet and software. We help companies from around the world expand to Asia, and companies in Asia expand cross-border within Asia. But we also have Indy Bio, San Francisco, and New York. We're the most active investor in biotech in the world. And Hacks, our hardware platform, with Shenzhen, San Francisco, and Tokyo. Just by way of background, when I started here 6.5 years ago, we had less than 200 million under management. Now we're up to $855 million. We're a bit unique in that we invest in 150, 140 companies per year. And we do make money. For those of you on the business school side, over the last 18 plus years, we have a 21% net IRR. Tends to bounce around, but we do make money. Rankings are all kind of like, BS, but we are extremely active. So we're very active in number 3 most active VC as of 2020 in the world. And the key thing for Asia is that we're number 5. Within Asia, especially recently, we started in China, but I'm the number 4 most active investor in India. And we're super active in Southeast Asia over the last 2 years, according to Tech in Asia. What we look at is where in the world are the innovations coming from? Okay, what can we learn from different markets? And many of people have learned from the US and taken those innovations globally. But what can we learn from, for instance, China and bring to Southeast Asia or South Asia or even Eastern Europe, South America, Latin America, or even the US? We call that cross-border innovation arbitrage. We'll talk a little bit about that today. More rankings, but we were quite active in a number of different deep tech kind of emerging verticals, which gives us not only a global perspective, but also a vertical by vertical by vertical perspective. We do make money. So here are some of the areas that we focus on. And I think for the point of today's conversation, what can we learn from China? I think there's obviously, China's got a very big lead. Over 30% of retail in China is e-commerce. The US has been adding 1% of e-commerce market share per year for the last 15 years. So it took 15 years for the US to be 15% e-commerce, whereas China's way over 30%. Now, the funny thing during COVID is that you had a leapfrog situation where, US actually caught up. So the U.S. is now 30% plus e-commerce. We'll see what happens post-COVID, but this is an opportunity perhaps for the U.S. To catch up to China. And within Leapfrog, there's education, there's opportunities in health, of course, media, and one of the biggest areas for Leapfrog is fintech. And we'll try and go through some micro examples today. So we invest money. We work with the companies to help them where they want to go. And thanks for Bryce and Paul for being amazing mentors in our China Accelerator and MOX programs. So one of the things that we cannot do without is our partner. So NYU has been a great partner. In fact, NYU first class, 4-year senior is now working with us in our Hacks platform. He's currently actually in New York. So Jason Crow, shout out to you. Hopefully you're in the audience somewhere. And one of the things that we help do is we work with global corporates and help them be competitive in China. China is the number 2 most largest economy in the world. Some measures #1, and multinationals are on the back foot. They're getting their butts kicked by local competitors. So these are some of the companies where we're bringing innovation from China, but also from around the world to the aid of global multinationals who are struggling in China. We call it the China Backdoor, and it's actually interesting. A lot of people go to China to sell to Chinese corporates, but what we help people do is go to China and sell to multinationals who are getting their proverbial butts kicked by local players and bringing global innovation to bear, not just to disrupt those big corporates, but actually to help them stay competitive. It's a bit of an innovation there because most VCs put huge amounts of money around disrupting the majors, while we're investing in early stage in companies that are bringing deep tech and cutting edge, oftentimes bleeding edge tech, to help these large corporates stay competitive. So things change, things move. Hopefully we'll learn a little bit about that today. You're probably very familiar with big internet, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple with Apple 13. What we look at these big internet companies, and in China we have Alibaba, we have Tencent. They're using privacy as an excuse to kill innovation, to kill competition, and to cut off, marketing. So one of the things that's been very important with digital marketing is the ability to drive attribution to target. And big internet, the players on the board here, the big are getting bigger, and they're like, oh, you love privacy, so we're going to use this as an excuse to cut off all information from brands, all information from agencies, all information from digital marketing firms, and basically drive a virtual monopoly in advertising. Regulation is interesting, and basically using PR to drive a kill shot into the heart of everyone's competition is what big internet is doing best. And this is just the most recent example of it. So we've all heard, about Alibaba and, them growing big. One of the things that most people don't know is they're backed by SoftBank, and SoftBank with their Vision Fund, but more recent, I used to work at SoftBank. I used to run VC for SoftBank in China, but they're using money as a weapon. So they, write huge checks and use that money to pay for very expensive advertising and then drive market share. Now that's less popular than it used to be, but it's still an innovation that comes out of China, where the big players use money as a weapon and they basically suck up all the oxygen in the room. We've seen it with SoftBank now, just because, you have companies like Uber and WeWork who have taken a hit in this. It does not mean that this innovation of using money as a weapon has disappeared. So how do you compete when you've got a bunch of very large players or emerging players with huge cash banks at their disposal? And then how do you benefit from the innovation whether it be business model innovation, which is very important, but also deep tech, hard tech innovation. How do you use these two tools to compete against the bigger players? And as an early stage venture investor, that's what we're focused on. So the first area we focus on is user acquisition. And we're going to talk a little bit about China and give some examples from outside of China. So traditionally, you've got paid acquisition. That is the standard US model. And so in China, you've got the traditional leaders. I've been covering the space, the internet space in China since 2004. And these are pay to play. But remember, Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu, they don't really generally make money on advertising. You can advertise on them, and brands do spend lots of money on them. But it's not much of a paid advertising game. So what actually really works in China is right now social commerce, celebrity commerce. Now, if you've heard of KOLs or key opinion leaders or internet celebrities, you're probably familiar with all of that, where people get up on stage and they sell. One of the biggest trends that we've seen is live streaming. And live streaming with virtual bloggers, with virtual KOLs, key opinion leaders, with virtual celebrities. So we've seen them come out of Japan, and they're actually getting on stage. Now, they don't. You don't have to pay them. They don't ask for green M&Ms. They're not temperamental, but they do drive sales. So one of the things that you should be exploring, and innovations that are coming out of first Japan, but really blowing up on Alibaba, Taobao, Tmall, is virtual live streaming avatars, characters, vloggers, live streaming salespeople who are really driving affinity with their audience and driving big sales. The second there's celebrity, and then there's influencer, and understanding the difference is key. So you have like traditional celebrity, you have online celebrity, and then an influencer. An influencer does not mean that you have 20, 30,000 followers. It could mean that you have 500 or 1,000 friends or 5,000 friends. But these people drive behavior, and especially they drive purchasing behavior. So in a market like China, where paid advertising doesn't really work, or the platforms don't want you to spend a lot of money on that, the model is different in China. The model is really focused not so much on a media-based model like Google and Facebook, where you pay ads money to get access, but in China, the platform is a revenue share model. And what they want to do is have the best content on their platforms, whether it be Ali or Tencent, and to have the best salespeople on their platforms. And those are known as influencers. There's KOLs, which are key opinion leaders, and KOCs, which are just like normal people who can get out there and help you sell. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, this is a ByteDance Douyin, which is TikTok. And very different than the US, where e-commerce from individuals has been for many years against the terms of service of Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp. It's really taking off for the last few years in China. And this is a major driver of traffic, major driver of revenue. And one of the reasons why China is a content first market, as opposed to kind of a media-driven market where people put content up and then have a gate. In China, things are very open, and then what you get is people who are providing that content, providing that entertainment, but then they're also monetizing, and it's all a revenue share based model. So if there's one thing that you learned tonight, it's all about, or this morning for you, it's all about revenue share. We have a company called Voila. And the CTO of ByteDance is an investor and advisor to the company, and we're bringing that same type of model to Instagrammers in the US. We signed up 6,000 of them, and basically we're enabling them to have that same experience in the US, where they're taking their audience on Instagram and monetizing it through e-commerce. And of course, we're using machine learning and data to drive on average like a 6x increase in conversion to sale. Next thing is like, how do you partner? How do you get out there? One of the most famous sort of handset players in China is Xiaomi. So Xiaomi, they're not just a leading cell phone player in China, but they're number one in a couple of European markets like Spain. They're actually the top player in India. And so Xiaomi has that unique sort of revenue share based model. But in this case, they're basically giving away a very high end handset. They're making no money on the handset in return for driving services, and they make a revenue share on services. So again, this is a revenue share based model, not a media based model like Google, Facebook, and to some extent Amazon. So for TravelPlan, this is a micro example of taking that model out. So Samsung's on the back foot. Samsung has reported that they might be going, or people have reported that they might be exiting the handset market. Just this last week, LG exited the handset market because they had no business plan, right? And Samsung really has no business plan. They're selling handsets that cost $800 with the same internal components, same spec as a Xiaomi that costs $450. So they're not competitive. But with TravelPlan, we're partnered and pre-installed in Samsung's in countries like South Korea and Indonesia, where it's an e-commerce platform, and every dollar made through e-commerce is then shared back to Samsung. And hopefully this will give a company like Samsung a new lease on life. So again, this is a business model innovation, but they're using a AI-driven chatbot to actually drive those sales. The third area I touch on is product, and product is key. So one of the things that really matters in China, and this is not such a deep tech type of problem. This is a market driven demand type problem or challenge or opportunity, is uniqueness. So when you're in the market, if you're just another Abercrombie or you're just another Zora, you're not unique. So one of the things that we've seen is the rise of unique product. So I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Shein. They're growing all over the world. They're big in the US. Last year, they did $10 billion in GMV. And the thing about all their American customers is they do not know that this is a Chinese company with a completely Chinese staff. Now, the models and the UX UI might seem sort of American or international. This is a pure Chinese company. So everybody thinks, oh yeah, ByteDance, now we know TikTok is Chinese, but a lot of people don't know that Shein, which is taking the fast fashion online world by storm across the US and other markets, is a Chinese company. What we also try and do is not just cross-border from China to the world, but we're also doing the same thing with Korea. So you take what you have in your home market and bring it out globally. And again, is this AI? Well, actually, yes. One of the things that when you talk about AI in China is a war between data and algorithms. So the US definitely has better algorithms, but China has better data. And so when you trade off, actually what matters often in the end is data and application. So you can have a worse algorithm, but more data, and beat out a better algorithm and poorer data, or better machine learning and poorer data. Brand is the fifth one. So going into brand, one of the biggest challenges is selling brands cross-border. So we talked about Shein going from the world to the US. What we're looking at is the world going into China. And one thing that most people don't understand is that the e-commerce market in China is set up very differently than everywhere else in the world. You've got in the US, Amazon, and then you've got the brand selling direct. You got a couple other small players, but in China, it's broken down to 3 or 4 very large players. You got Tmall for brands, Taobao for sort of like small B2C, Pinduoduo on top of on Tencent, which is basically a group buy type of platform. You've got Xiaohongshu, like a little red book, and for international brands or any brands that are coming into China, the key is how do you leverage data and understand your consumer. The challenge with big internet is their role is to be a gatekeeper between the seller and the buyer, so that the seller does not understand the buyer and the buyer does not really get to understand the seller directly. So they are trying to be that gatekeeper. And we're seeing that in the US with Amazon. So nothing new there. Sorry. So last thing I'm just going to go through is being low price. So low price is, China is very much known for low price. More recently, over the last 5 years, I think most of you hopefully know that 40% of the global luxury in the world is consumed by Chinese. Most of that actually out of China until COVID. But what about low price? So one of the things that China has done very, very well, and again, is this innovation. Why is China the next Silicon Valley? Because they're very, very good at marketing. They can take an idea that might have come out of the US, like eBay, but then they can super localize it in China. And make it work for the local market. And one of the biggest things is that leapfrog. So when you go into China, there's only 2,000 Adidas stores, right? And you cannot serve 1.4 billion pairs of feet with only 2,000 stores. So e-commerce really, really took off. Now, how do you take advantage of that? So there's a company in India called Kutlu, and what they do is they take what China learned from the US, and then when the Indians took it out of China, they adapt it to the local market. And the way they do that is using chatbots and AI for automatic translation of chat. And the localization is the bargaining culture. So people want to bargain for price, and they can do this automatically, even if they don't speak the same language, using technology and machine voice and assistance, and basically bargain down. So the funny thing about Kutlu is the prices are not set. The buyer and the average price that the seller sets, the buyer is paying on average 40% lower. Now, again, when you're going cross-border into multiple markets, marketing does change. So the playbook that you run in the US doesn't work in China, and the playbook that you run in the US and China doesn't work in a market like India. So you have to learn as you go and really adapt and change. But the key thing that does not change is this is all technology driven. Logistics, very simply, going cross-border, we have a massive logistics supply chain. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go into that. The last one, though, is personas. So, when you're going out and selling, when you're interviewing for a job, or when you're trying to raise money, you always need to understand who your audience is, what they like, and what they want. Now, one of the biggest challenges these days with GDPR and this push for privacy is that it's very difficult to understand your customer. So how do you understand your customer when you've got Amazon between you and your customer, when you've got Facebook and Google creating a wall between you and your customer? How do you penetrate through? So where we're looking at a couple of examples, one is Calagato, where they're tracking what's happening, and they don't actually know who anybody is, but they're getting loads of real-time data across multiple apps. Now it's GDPR compliant, but they understand who's doing what, who's buying what, who goes where they live, where they work, what time they get up. And this huge mass of data is very important, not to target ads, but to understand who one's customer should be, the pricing, what types of customers are interested in what types of things. So for example, we have a company who tracks data. Now, we don't actually know who everybody is, but we know we can track every single person who goes into a marijuana dispensary in the US, well, 70% of them, 70% of the US population. Now, we're not going to be targeting those users, but we do know what other things those users do. So again, on the one side, GDPR compliant and privacy compliant, but on the other side, how do you use technology to draw insights out that you can then use to better market your product? And so is this the next Silicon Valley? Well, it's very creative. It's leveraging huge amounts of data, right? And it is is this going to make China the next Silicon Valley? Well, we're here to talk about marketing and PR and communications. If you want to talk about spaceships and electronic vehicles and whatever, that's another story. But for marketing PR, this is next generation. Most of the things that we're talking about here, you have not seen anywhere else in the world. So with that, I'm going to, so the last part, AI. So one of the last thing I'll focus on is, the big guys get AI, right? So we talked a little bit about models and data, but large companies get the models, large companies get the data. Everybody, knows that in Amazon, you have these little, boxes that people who bought this, bought that. And they probably didn't, but people who like this, like that. And the last time I checked, 35 to 40% of the sales that go through Amazon are driven through these recommendation boxes. So one of the, there's two companies, one called Appier, who just went public, and they're like one of the first internet unicorns to come out of Taiwan. And they use keyword-driven AI to drive purchase decisions. And the key thing is not that their AI is amazing or whatever. The key thing is that technology is democratizing e-commerce. The last thing that we want is for Amazon to take over e-commerce, right? So Shopify is sort of like the newcomer. And if you pop Appier or some of these tools into a Shopify account, you can anybody can be almost competitive with Amazon. Maybe not on the shipping, but definitely on the selection and on the optimization and personalization of that shopping experience. So for Rosetta AI, what they do, this is not the language learning company, they actually optimize not by keyword, but based on human taste, like my taste in clothing. So do I like, super dry knockoff t-shirts that have my logo on it? Do I like, Warby Parker glasses, or do I like traditional sort of Ray-Bans or something like that? Do I like corduroy versus blouse versus red versus velour? And they allow sort of every company to have the same type of weapons and tools to compete that a big company like Amazon does. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about what we do, we feature a lot of experts from around Asia and China, including many of the 450 mentors in our accelerators, MOX and China Accelerator, on our podcast. So you can check it out. There's probably way too much stuff in there. We turn some of it into articles so it becomes searchable. And feel free to follow us, or especially for NYU, I stuck my email down at the bottom because you're probably not going to figure out how to use a QR if you're on the US East Coast. So with that, going to open it up to Q&A and kick it back to Paul and Bryce. Hopefully that was useful in terms of some broad examples, but also especially for marketing and for PR and for how we take deep tech and hard tech and sexy tech, but apply it to marketing, which is an old and staid industry, which has actually been under a lot of pressure recently. Hopefully that brings some insight from Shanghai to all of you. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you, William. That was super insightful and very clean presentation.
Clean's good. Cheers.
Clean is good. I know you're working hard on those things. Why don't I start off with questions, and then if anyone in the audience wants to ask a question, then please put it into the chat window, okay? And then we'll take it from there. But I want to talk about I've been reading a lot about just, a lot of the companies you showcase. What is it about Asia and China specifically that makes them, that makes it unique, that makes it what is it about this part of the world that if you take that sort of startup and put it in the US or put it in London, it would not necessarily work? Is it a mindset issue? Is it a attitude? Is it really just a business model? You know, are Asians better at business models than Westerners? What's sort of your take on that? Just understanding your experience across both markets or multiple markets.
Sure. So one way to think about it is that China is a little bit like, I don't know, Tasmania or the Galapagos, where, disease and animals spread all around the world, but there was this one pocket where that influence did not spread, and the development of the local ecosystem and the flora and the fauna were much different than everywhere else. The only difference between the Galapagos and China is that China is like the #2 economy in the world. And so you have basically a separate, different ecosystem, which does have many different rules. It has different players. So not only do the problems that you have in say the US, they're very different than the problems or challenges than you have in China, but also, so the challenges somebody has in New Jersey is very different than the challenges in China. When I was growing up, there's like malls and stores, and there's like over retail, and China has traditionally had under retail, especially if you go outside of the major cities. So it's just a completely different environment. And then because of like regulatory issues, let's call them regulatory issues, right? You have different players in the game. And the US way of doing things has been very like, we know best, right? So we take one model and we drive that same software, which is scalable and repeatable, into every single country around the world. And then, yeah, it worked pretty much everywhere. They killed every single other, internet company all around the world. And then they kind of hit a wall in Japan, they hit a wall in Korea, and it definitely hit a big wall in China. It just doesn't work there. So on the one side, like most products and services that solve a challenge or an opportunity in Western Europe or US simply do not solve a problem in China. And then the second thing is that the basic infrastructure in China is completely different. And the easiest way to think about it is US is a media-driven model based on advertising. And China is an open model based on giving the greatest experience. But it's a toll booth model where anybody can drive on the road, but everybody has to pay a little toll, pay a little revenue share. So this is why basically every single US internet company came to China that didn't get blocked from the outset. But this is how Amazon got its ass kicked. This is how Google got its ass kicked. They went from 65% market share down to 11% before they decided to leave. They didn't get really blocked by China. I mean, sometimes there's a little finger on the scale, but they got their butts kicked before they left China because they were upset with getting hacked. My friends were on the China Council within Google, and they thought it was a bad decision. It's always, a decision whether you want to be in another market or not, whether you want to have access to information or technology or not. We don't need to go into that now. But the bottom line is that if you're sitting in Mountain View and trying to remote control something in another market, the lesson is that no, it does not work. You need to have people on the ground. You need to have people who have command and control on the ground. If you're trying to remote control commandos who are in a black ops somewhere off in the jungle somewhere, trying to tell them which direction to go and who to shoot, it usually ends up badly. And that's what happened to Google in China. And it's the same thing with Tencent. Tencent with WeChat was spending $120,000 US a day on marketing WeChat out of China. This is going back like 6-7 years. And they went to 300 million users outside of China, and then very quickly went to 100 million users, because what works in China doesn't work outside of China. So hopefully that's useful to folks.
Yeah, it's very interesting, William. You mentioned a lot of innovations, AI, live streaming. You mentioned some other aspects of things that are happening here. Given you mentioned Shein as a brand, probably people aren't aware of as a commerce player. Obviously, TikTok has really taken off. what do you think is the next big wave? What's the next big innovation that's going to come from China to the Western world? Where should we be looking? Would it be in data? Would it be in algorithms? Would it be in a platform? Would it be a way that people shop? What is the next big wave from China, in your opinion? Thanks.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I'm not a teenage American, obviously, but according to my understanding, Shein is doing very well in America. I don't know what percentage of their 10 billion US in GMV that they did in the US last year, but I think that the reason why this very, very Chinese company is doing well is based on their use of data and their use of basically AI is like algorithms, right? Or you can say machine learning. I mean, it's not truly intelligent, but it is driving very effective personalization. So are we going to see like 10,000 ByteDances or TikToks or Sheins coming out of the market? Well, depends on whether the rest of the market can compete. I think most of the rest of the world is not leveraging data and is not leveraging machine learning to the extent that China is. And again, we're talking about PR and comms here. So the next big thing is that it's not just cute little videos of people doing funny dances taking over your kids' lives. It's many apps from shopping to even potentially financial services to health to games is already dominated by China globally. That will take over the consumer internet. And again, with Shein, I don't know if people on this have never seen it because they're not in the right age demographic. But if you talk to younger people, they're definitely probably seen their ads because they're being heavily targeted. And the fact that they haven't seen it is a testament to that company's ability to take marketing and targeting using that data to the next level, because they know that most of you're probably postgraduate or graduate or in your professional lives, probably have kids. You're not in their target demographic, and the very fact that you have no idea who they are is a testament to that next level ability to target. A lot of people think about AI in abstract terms. This is AI in real terms every day, making money. And if you are not leveraging that same capability, it's like trying to get into a fight with both hands tied behind your back. You're definitely going to lose.
William, you talked a lot. You mentioned
I talk a lot. I know.
Thing. Okay, that's why we like you.
Sorry.
You talked about big data. You talked about algorithms. No worries, dude. No worries. We could talk more when you come back to Shanghai. Big data, algorithms, right? You're saying US is better at algorithms. I would almost like to have a counter argument to say China is, TikTok is, and I know people that work at TikTok and they talk about the algorithm, right? And how literally they hook people on within the first 10 to 20 swipes. And it's not a discovery model like YouTube, right? You don't type in a keyword, you don't type in a passion point. It literally will just figure out the passion point in 8 to 10 swipes, right? So help me understand the sort of if China gets better at the algorithm, which I think they're actually probably already at that point, if not getting to a point where it's taking over because algorithm needs data to feed it. Talk a little bit about that sort of that inflection point that's going to happen and how you see it working in terms of advanced knowledge, in terms of PhDs and computer scientists, then exporting a lot of that knowledge to either Western platforms or these Chinese platforms taking over because it's outgunning Facebook and Google of the world.
Well, I think one of the advantages that generally most of the world has is that they hire the best of the best from everywhere. And for China, they're not really so into that, right? So, I mean, is it going to be the next Silicon Valley in that sense, where it's multicolored and multicultural? No, it's generally not multicultural. It's the people I know, there's like 5 like white dudes at ByteDance that I know, like out of like thousands of people, and so that is one of the reasons why you might not get that sort of Silicon Valley creativity to come out of China, especially on the marketing and brand side. But on the flip side, what kind of innovation in marketing brands have we seen coming out of the West, right? Most of the Western agencies couldn't, innovate their way out of a paper bag. WPP has been basically what's that thing now? A yard sale where you go down the ski slope and then you lose all your clothes and your skis and your boots. They're some good friends of mine are there, but they're like, most of them have left. It's a disaster. So, we'll see what happens. But I would say, probably 2 or 3 key, points to note. This is not a zero-sum game. It's not like a 0 or 1, bad, good, winner or loser, right? There's multiple markets around the world. The good parts about where China is with marketing, I've already pointed out. We don't really need to go into the several bad parts, but like that one is that it's not super diverse. They don't always really understand the markets that they're going into. One of the great things is that some of the companies are data driven, many of the companies are not, and we've seen that. And then decoupling or this sort of growing barrier in the markets is not going to bode well, because it's very when you cannot go cross border, when it's difficult for everybody to go into China, or it's very difficult for other people to come out. That's where the learning breaks down. And what I'm afraid of, or what is starting to happen, is what I call bubbles. We got COVID, and there's like travel bubbles. So bubble is a little bit more friendly than some other words I could think of. But you've got the China bubble, the China internet bubble. It's been an intranet for a long time. And people who live in that bubble are in an alternative market. So when you sell to that market, or when you see people coming out of that market, you have to understand the rules of that bubble. Now, the problem is for marketers. The problem is for PR, and especially for technologists who are trying to be global and trying to build a global company, is that now you have European bubble with GDPR, and you have India bubble where you can't have China companies, and then you have American bubble potentially where there's a new set of rules for people operating in America, and so it becomes lots of different bubbles. And in order to build a interesting company that can have a global reach, and you have to be able to become expert at penetrating and popping and going through those bubbles. So it's a new skill for the next, that might be the next thing, is the ability to not just go cross-border, which is what we do, but it's harder now, where if you're going to go cross-border, if you're going to be able to go multinational, it's a different skill set, because you have to be able to penetrate those bubbles.
I think that's a great spot actually to pick up a question that was raised by one of our previous speakers, who made the comment that in terms of sort of marketing and PR skills in China, that they are not as well developed. And whatever you may feel about corporate structures of some of the big US players, clearly that investment, the field of marketing PR as a place for emerging professionals to go, the skill sets and the practice and experience around that, whether it's in the big FMCG firms, like P&G, or coming out of great schools like NYU, there's a lot of that training experience. So what's your sense of the state of marketing and PR skills in China among the Chinese companies you're working with? And as a sort of build, which I think will be helpful to our students, what skills do you think they ought to learn? So we're graduating, and we have 1,500 students at any one time studying marketing and PR at NYU at the School of Professional Studies. What would you tell them they need to learn, and what do you think folks in China need to learn from a marketing and PR perspective?
Yeah, so I one of the entrepreneurs that invested in a serial entrepreneur, been there, done that. He exited his first firm to a company called Sina, and then he started a designer boutique budget hotel chain. So it's designer boutique, which is kind of cool. But the other thing was budget, because at that time there was this like sort of, there's the budget hotels, and then there's the nice hotels, and there's a nice little gap in there. He exited for 520 million US to China Hospitality, a major hotel group. Not a bad exit considering he didn't raise that much money. But the thing that he said is that within China, tongue in cheek a little bit, but he didn't have the tongue in his cheek when he said this, is that the people who really know what's what and who are really good in China, they become entrepreneurs. And the people who can execute pretty well, but they don't have what it takes to become an entrepreneur, they will go then work for the entrepreneurs. And the people who are not very good and cannot execute, but are really just good at talking, they will work for multinationals like P&G. So it depends on where you want to put yourself. But I'd say, the way to think about what people have to learn and what they don't have to learn, my advice is threefold. First of all, what works in China doesn't work always outside of China. So if you take somebody who's super expert in China, they're going to come off a little bit like a bumpkin when you go outside of China, right? And this is the same reason why when you take somebody who gets dropped in from London and they get dropped into Shanghai or Beijing, they need somebody who sucks to take care of them and like show them around. So it's it's tough. So they don't get the creme de la creme. They get the leftovers, which is to some extent what you see in a lot of the multinationals. People who are very good at communicating but not very good at executing, right? So it kind of works both ways. I say that the second thing is, there's only so much that you can learn by reading a book. And so there's something I usually say to the classes. I won't say it online here because this is being recorded, but there's a big difference between doing something and reading about it in a book. And so I really encourage everybody to actually go do it. And don't just read it in the book. And that's why, programs like NYU, we're partnered with them doing internships, and we actually hire from them. So super proud to be partnered, because it's not just about, at NYU reading things in books. It's about going out there and practicing and bringing, the alumni back and the professors who are actual practitioners and not just to blow smoke up your up wherever. But no, it's very important to us. And then I'd say the last thing is it's very hard. I invest in entrepreneurs, and I was a failed entrepreneur. That's why I'm a VC. It's very difficult to understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, and then focus on what you're good at, and sort of get somebody else to do what you're not good at. Somebody who's better than you. So when you are, deciding on your career or where you want to go or which markets you want to go to, oftentimes China is a very shiny, flashy, attractive market. It's the new Silicon Valley. But or it could be London, or it could be Paris, or it could be Singapore or whatever. But the key, the last point is just focus, right? So you want to focus on the area, the place that you're really strong at, And when you're not super strong, you might want to partner, or you just might want to let it go and not really focus on it. So for large multinationals, they don't have a choice. They have to be in China. It's the #2 economy in the world, and they have a choice. But for most everybody else, they do have a choice. So the last point I just make on this question is really the key is focus. And now that everybody's out of school and onto the rest of the world, you want to focus on what you're the best at. So hopefully that helps.
Can I one quick follow up, William? I think that's phenomenal counsel. Frankly, whether you're talking to students in China, India, Latin America, or the UK, this idea of focus on execution, not just communication, and the difference we talk about at the school, the difference between knowing what and knowing how. And there's a strong emphasis on the knowing how, that we're not this bookish, we're academically rigorous, but not bookish. We want students. And then I love your point about focus on what you're good at. But the question, just as a follow-up, and I'm the voice of the students today, I guess, but I'll hand it back to Paul and Bryce, is, we have a large number of students studying overseas. As you know, lots of Chinese students go not just to the US, not just to prestigious schools like NYU and join us at the School of Professional Studies, but around the world to study and quote unquote bring skills back to China. And the question from one of our participants is, how and where do you think they can add value in terms of marketing and PR? So sort of asking you the question, what are perhaps some of the lessons to be learned from the US that you see as valuable coming back to China?
Yeah. So one of the things that, not to put a too fine a point on it, but instinct is useful, but it only gets you so far, right? And so instinct does not allow you to go cross-border, because the instinct that allows you to, hire a famous football player in China to push your app might also drive you to hire Messi for like $10 million to push WeChat, which gets you actually nowhere, right? So one thing that really you can bring back to China is a data-driven approach. A really analytical approach, not just driven off of instinct. And instinct is very important, but then instinct backed up by data. And I'm not saying people in China don't use data, but as a younger person coming in, being able to not just have the feel, but then test and then track and then manage. That complete cycle is something that will hold you in good stead. And that's the type of thing that, like, in a liberal arts education or an education, I went to liberal arts type of school, well-rounded school like NYU, where you have a little bit of everything. That will, throughout your career, no matter whether you're in China or Berlin or like, San Francisco or wherever, will hold you in good stead. The second thing, there's some cultural issues here, but the ability to, communicate and formulate an idea and express it, to some extent, okay, it's a kind of a Western skill. It's an American skill. Americans put it on a pedestal, and then in many places around the world, it's kind of seen as like we're rude, right? Because we get up on the top of the thing and we start yelling at people about what we think, right? But the ability to actually put that out there and basically formulate a thought and have reasons behind it, as long as you can deliver it in a way that you don't piss other people off, can be quite powerful. And increasingly in China and around the world, that's important. You obviously have to be sensitive in your delivery, but that's a key thing that people in global institutions get. And then the last thing is just being global, right? We talk about Too High, which is China going global. We've always helped international companies enter China. For the last couple of years, we've been helping China companies go global. So being those bridges, especially in these tough times where we have all these bubbles, people who are global citizens have an understanding that there are different ways of being, different ways of seeing, different ways of communicating, and different ways of selling are really important. And that's the third thing, because as China goes global, they're going to need people who understand what is beyond and what is outside and what is, oftentimes scary.
That's really interesting, William. I think I have the honor to ask the final question, and it's probably a question that you get all the time. It's certainly a question that many students would have. At the outset of your presentation, you mentioned that that you have 1,000 companies plus that you currently investing in, and $700 million plus. So, what advice do you give to young Chinese entrepreneurs that come into your door and say, listen, we want you to invest in a company? What are a couple of things, good pointers, or what are things to avoid that you could possibly recommend to those young, energetic entrepreneurs that could help them to succeed? Thanks.
Yeah, so, well, the first thing is, it's kind of funny, but we don't actually invest in too many young entrepreneurs. We invest in like the old crusty ones, not too crusty, but so the first thing, if you're a young budding entrepreneur, that I would suggest you do is to work in somebody else's startup and watch them screw it up. The great thing about when it's somebody else's startup is you can think about it a lot like a class. And kind of see all the different ways that they mess it up, because they will mess it up. I mean, it is startup. What we help our companies do is fail faster, but they still fail all over the place, right? So I'd say the first thing is to, do internships, get out there, work. We have actually a position for this. Anybody who's a recent grad or about to graduate, we call it chief of staff, or project manager, or whatever the name is. We basically put a young, bright person underneath our C-level, CEO, and they basically catch all this shit, because generally shit falls downhill. But they basically catch it and juggle it and help make those entrepreneurs a lot more productive. Because to be very honest, and this goes to the second point, being an entrepreneur is for crazy people. Because you are crazy. You take no salary. You don't get to see your friends. You don't sleep very much. You don't get paid. You actually lose all your savings. And you continually go to work every day having failed and failed. And then keep on coming back for more. And the people who succeed are the people who never give up. But when you probably should give up, because you're failing over and over and over again. So the second thing is just kind of understand, is this you, right? Because not everybody is crazy. So if you think you're really crazy, okay, go for it. But if this does not sound super attractive to you, because right now, TV shows or Trump, The Apprentice, or whatever, everybody wants to do startup, but it's not super glamorous. I mean, the bottom line, 3 of the entrepreneurs in our portfolio committed suicide. And the screwed up thing is that is below industry average, right? This is not like a summer camp. It's very, very difficult. It's one of the reasons why we do it all together in an accelerator, because it makes it a bit easier to have a structure and friends around you. But think long and hard about whether it's right for you. And then the last thing is, I'm a VC, so I invest in startups. And the last thing I'd leave you with on this is that companies, are basically constructs that make money in a scalable and repeatable way. Whereas startups are in search of that. It's an idea that is neither scalable or repeatable, right? So if you do a startup, you're in search of scalability and repeatability. And then when you take VC, you're trying to supercharge it and create an outsized impact on the world. And you're taking that huge amount of VC money and you're trying to take off. So But for the vast majority of businesses, their startups have become businesses, you do not need VC money. VC money is not an achievement, it's a responsibility. It's not just a responsibility, it's actually probably something you don't want, because if you have something that's already scalable or repeatable, you can build it into something called a lifestyle business. And lifestyle businesses have a bad name. Because it's like, oh, you didn't get VC or a lifestyle business. Well, my college freshman year roommate who was assigned to, he had a nice lifestyle business. He built up this nice business over 20 years. By the end of it, he's paying himself $6 million a year. He sold it for $300 million to KKR. And like, he's got a very nice lifestyle, and there's nothing wrong with building a scalable, repeatable business that has nothing to do with VC. So don't look at raising money from anybody other than friends and family and friends and family as an achievement. Sometimes it just makes sense to stay away from VC, and hopefully that helps there.
Well, thank you so much, William. That's a great note to end on after 30 years of working in the for-profit world. I'm not sure if I would describe academia as a lifestyle business, but certainly it doesn't have the same pressures as I know you, Paul, Bryce, and many of the folks on the phone have enjoyed in the corporate world. So, absolutely superb. I appreciate your candor, your reality check on a lot of important things. And we really look forward to seeing you back in our community, and hopefully sending some of our folks your way. To any one of our students on the presentation, please get in touch with William Bao Bean. I served as Chief of Staff to the COO of Time Warner, and it was a phenomenal 2 years. It's a fantastic rotation in anyone's career. So, I agree with William. So thanks again, William. Excellent. And Bryce and Paul, as ever, had a good evening in Shanghai. And thanks to all three of you from us in New York and points beyond.
Yeah.
So
thanks. I really enjoyed lecturing in person in the Shanghai NYU in the fall. That was great, and look forward to joining you all in person again. When we can all travel again. So thank you so much, Bryce, Paul, Michael.
Excellent.
Thanks.
All right, guys.
Cheers. Thank you.
All right.